John the Baptist knew Jesus was the Messiah, and when John was on God's side, he testified to him. But when God no longer directly inspired him and John returned to his normal state, his disbelief of Jesus became aggravated by his ignorance. John the Baptist, who did not realize that he was Elijah, regarded Jesus from the same standpoint as other people, especially after John's imprisonment. Accordingly, everything Jesus said or did seemed, from the merely human standpoint of John the Baptist, to be strange and incomprehensible. Moreover, John himself could not believe that Jesus, who had appeared before the coming of Elijah, was the Messiah. At last John sent his disciples to Jesus in an attempt to remove his doubt by asking him, "Are you he who is to come, or shall we look for another?" Matthew 11:3. Jesus, so questioned, answered indignantly with an air of admonition, Matthew 11:4-10. John the Baptist was chosen by God while he was still in his mother's womb for the mission of serving him throughout his life, Luke 1:76, and was trained in the wilderness, leading the bitter life of an ascetic in order to prepare the way of the Lord. When Jesus started his public ministry, God first told John who Jesus was, then had him testify to Jesus being the Son of God. When John the Baptist, who was failing to fulfill his mission and blessing from heaven, asked Jesus such a question, Jesus did not answer straightforwardly that he was the Messiah, which should have been plain enough. He answered in a roundabout way, saying, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, and the lame walk. Lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear. And the dead are raised up, and the poor have good news preached to them." Matthew 11:4-5. Of course, John the Baptist was not ignorant of such miracles and wonders done by Jesus. Nevertheless, Jesus gave such a lengthy explanation in order to let him know who he was, by reminding John the Baptist of what he was doing. We must understand that when Jesus said the poor had good news preached to them, Matthew 11:5, he was indicating his grief over the disbelief of the Jewish people, and especially that of John the Baptist. The chosen people of Israel, especially John, had been richly blessed with divine love and care. Nevertheless, they betrayed Jesus, and he was compelled to wander about the seacoast of Galilee through the region of Samaria to search among the poor for those who would listen to the gospel. The ignorant fishermen, tax collectors, and harlots were such poor people. Actually, the disciples of Jesus would have preferred were not the people of this kind. Jesus, having come to establish the kingdom of heaven on earth, was more in need of one person qualified to lead 1,000 than 1,000 following him blindly. Did he not therefore first preach the gospel in the temple to the chief priests and scribes in search of those who were able and well prepared? However, as Jesus indicated in a parable, he had to call beggars roaming about on the street to the feast because the invited had not come. Jesus, who himself had to go about bringing in those who were uninvited, at last uttered bitter words of judgment in deep lamentation, saying, "Blessed is he who takes no offense at me." Matthew 11:6. Jesus predicted John the Baptist's destiny by saying indirectly that one who took offense at him would not be blessed, however great he might be. On the contrary, it was John the Baptist who had offended Jesus. How did John the Baptist offend him? John failed to carry out his mission of serving and ministering to Jesus. After the disciples of John the Baptist left him, Jesus said, "Truly I say to you, among those born of women, there has risen no one greater than John the Baptist, yet he who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." Matthew 11:11. Indicating that, from the standpoint of his ministry, John the Baptist had come originally as the greatest of all the prophets, but that he was failing to accomplish his mission. All those in heaven had once been born of women and lived their earthly lives before they died. Therefore, it would have been natural for him, who was the greatest of all those born of women, to be the greatest also in heaven. Then, why was John the Baptist worse than he was least in the kingdom of heaven? Numerous prophets in the past had testified to the Messiah from a distance, looking forward to his coming in the future. But John the Baptist came with the mission of testifying to the Messiah directly. Since it was the mission of the prophets to testify to the Messiah, John the Baptist, who was to testify to the Messiah directly, was greater than any of the other prophets who testified to him indirectly. However, seen from the point of ministering to the Messiah, he was the least one. This is because the least in the kingdom of heaven recognizes Jesus as the Messiah and serves him, while John the Baptist, who was called for the mission of serving him closely in person, Luke 1:76, did not prepare the way of Jesus and failed to serve him. Jesus went on to say, "From John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence, and men of violence take it." If John the Baptist, who was chosen in the womb, and trained in so difficult an ascetic life in the wilderness, had only served Jesus as he should, he would no doubt have become his chief disciple. But since John failed to accomplish his mission of serving Jesus, Peter took the position of chief disciple. In the passage, from John the Baptist until now the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence, Jesus was not referring to the failure of the people in general, but that of John the Baptist himself. If John had acted wisely, he would not have left Jesus, and his deeds would have remained for eternity as righteousness. But unfortunately, he blocked the way for the Jewish people to go to Jesus as well as his own way. Here we have come to understand that the greatest factor leading to the crucifixion of Jesus was the failure of John the Baptist. Paul lamented over the ignorance of the people, including John the Baptist, who crucified Jesus, saying, "None of the rulers of this age understood this, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory." 1 Corinthians 2:8. Number 4, the reason that John the Baptist was Elijah. According to what we have previously stated, we can see that John the Baptist came to succeed Elijah and accomplish the mission which Elijah had left unaccomplished on earth. As Luke 1:17 says, John was born with the mission of going before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, and to make ready for the Lord a people prepared. For this reason, John was the second advent of Elijah from the standpoint of their identical mission. Details will be clarified in the chapter on resurrection, but we know now that Elijah descended in spirit to John the Baptist. By cooperating with John the Baptist, he tried to accomplish his mission, which he had left unaccomplished during his physical life on earth, through the physical body of John the Baptist. John the Baptist was in the position of representing Elijah's physical body, making himself identical with Elijah from the standpoint of their mission. 5. Our attitude toward the Bible. We have learned from our study of the Bible that the ignorance and disbelief of John the Baptist brought about the disbelief of the Jewish people, which finally compelled Jesus to take the way of crucifixion. Since the time of Jesus until the present, no one has been able to reveal this heavenly secret. This is because we have hitherto read the Bible from the standpoint that John the Baptist was the greatest prophet of all. We have learned from the story of John the Baptist that we must abandon the conservative attitude of faith which has caused us to be afraid to remove old traditional concepts. If it would be unjust to believe that John the Baptist had failed to accomplish his mission when he actually succeeded, it would also no doubt be wrong to believe that he fulfilled his mission when on the contrary he had failed to do so. We must struggle to obtain the right way of faith, both in spirit and truth. We have now brought to light the true nature of the story of John the Baptist as demonstrated in the Bible. Any Christian who in spiritual communication can see John the Baptist directly in the spirit world will be able to understand the authenticity of all these things. Amen.